Yo guys, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be doing a survivor tier list, so those survivor mains out there can start season 17 off with the right characters. Now, this is assuming that these adjustments have come out, which includes like the dancer can now pick up her boxes and has that like sliding ability, and thief has like a less stun time and the 5 flashlight thing. That is assuming that these are all done. I didn't actually pick up when these were happening, so I'm not sure if these have been done or not. If they have been done, I should also mention the last one that I have written down here, which is they got rid of the magician rescuing debuff, so he'll rescue like a normal survivor now, I think. So those 3 things are for survivors are coming. The rest of it, entomologist got a nerf, but she's still not changing in tier. Those 3 characters will be changing in tier because of that buff, so they'll be, placed differently. This tier list is assuming that those are out. Those characters, their buffs are done. So if those aren't done, then I will be telling you where they normally place also in the list, just in case, because I didn't catch the buff time. So, or the time that they will have gotten that. I'm just fumbling now with my words. Obviously, as usual, I have to put this at the beginning of the video so people aren't mean to me. If you disagree, this is kind of like, I'm trying to be as impartial as possible and rate characters just on their skill, but again, you can't escape some sort of opinion, so if you don't agree with me, put it in the comments, but be nice about it. Actually, try and give a reason, try and, put logic there instead of calling me a dumbass and leaving it at that. Also, I'm not trying to shit on your main or whatever. I'm just trying to present the facts and how, the characters in terms of their skills are, and what you probably should be playing. I'm not saying that you can't play a C tier character, and I'm not saying you should play an S tier character. I'm just saying these are the characters that will work the best in the current meta. Now, that's out of the way, which I hate that I have to say that, but I do. Let's get into what these tiers actually mean. So obviously, we are having 4 tiers, C tier, B tier, A tier, and S tier. C tier being the worst, B tier being the second worst, A tier being, I guess, the second best, and S tier being the best. And S tier basically means best characters in the game. There should probably be at least one of these in every team comp. Again, I'm not saying that you should have them in every team comp, I'm just saying that's probably a good idea. And they're pretty much used in every single tournament. These are really only the characters used there. A tier basically means good all-around characters that just aren't the best, but they can still be a really great option, especially if you master them. And they do get used pretty often in tournaments, and they're very good options for ranked games. B tier is alright characters. They're not generally used in rank, especially high tier rank, unless you master them, and they're pretty much never used in tournaments. And then C tier is they just suck, basically. End of story. Yeah, they're really only used in quick match for fun. So let's go ahead and start with the worst tier and go with the best tier. The full list will be down in the description. If you want to skip the full video and just look at that, go ahead. It'll just be a quick version. I'll be going into the actual reasons why these characters are where they are. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So, first off, in C tier, we're going to have the lawyer, and I should probably mention that these aren't in any order, so if I say lawyer first, it doesn't mean he's the best or worst in C tier, he just means he's there. It doesn't mean like another character is better or worse than him in the C tier, it just means he's in C tier. So, we're going to start off with lawyer now. This is a little bit of a controversial one, I guess, because he's gotten a little bit more usability after his foresight got a pretty good buff, but it's still pretty useless. Using lawyer in the VC is quite pointless, actually, if you're especially in a team of 4. Even a team of 2, you can pretty much know what the spawns are anyway. So lawyer is just not as great. as he would be. Even in solo, he's not amazing. He still has pretty much nothing on his kiting ability, and all he really has is foresight, which renders him basically a selfish mind's eye, who's also not a very good character. He also only gets his decoding ability after he's decoded a full cipher, which at that point isn't even super helpful, so he just doesn't have a lot to help him get into higher tiers. Personally, I wish they never buffed Lawyer because he was kind of useful for learning the game, but that's my opinion. Next in C tier, we have Thief before buff. He's just really useless, enough said. He doesn't have a lot of traits. His flashlight is basically never going to work. And yeah, he's just kind of a garbage character in general. Next in C tier, we have the Mind's Eye, who I already mentioned is Lawyer kind of being a selfish version. Mind's Eye is Lawyer, but worse. She lets the whole team see the hunter, but she also sends the hunter basically knowing where she is, which is a character like Mind's Eye a really bad plan. If Mind's Eye gets found first, it's curtains for the team. You're probably not going to win that match. Best you're likely going to do is a tie. And yeah, that's you're basically at a disadvantage rescuing her, and you almost might as well just not do it in general. So she's like a glass cannon, but if glass was more fragile. Like, I would call Mechanic a glass cannon, but you know, she's at least got something to help her and make up for her bad kiting. Mind's Eye basically just has like light speed sonic decoding, but that's not even going to matter because she's found so much and so easily. But let's move on to the last character in C tier, which is going to be the Lucky Guy. It pains me to put him here, but he's not a very good character. Everybody that watches his channel, especially watches me on Twitch, knows I love Lucky Guy. I have a Lucky Guy A badge. I really like this character, but he just sucks. He takes a lot of time away from decoding when he does his chests. Plus, adding in the fact that his chests aren't even guaranteed most of the time. So, like, I've had matches, and I've played a lot of Lucky Guy. I've had matches where I open 5 chests, and it's like, oh, I didn't even get a flare gun. I didn't even get the item I wished for out of all 5 of those times. So it's like, you know, you don't even get a guaranteed item. He does have a little bit of flexibility. At the end of the game, he can have, like, whatever item he needs. He can have a elbow pad. He can have a wand if he wanted that. But again, it's not 100% guaranteed, but those items are a lot more likely than getting a flare gun, in all fairness. If you want to know more about how I would actually balance Lucky Guy, I have a video out on that at my channel, so if you want to go look at that, I think I'll put an end card, or not an end card, a thing in the top right that you could click on to go look at that, and it'll also be in the description if you want to go check that out. But that's going to be doing it for the C tier. Moving on to B tier, which is where the majority of the characters are. First up, we're going to have the Doctor. Doctor's pretty good. Her buff made it so she can kite a pretty decent amount better than she could before, but it's still not that substantial. And again, like I've always said this, and a lot of people have said this as well, that healing is just not enough to base a character around. Like, take Priestess, for example. She has a healing buff, and it's really nice. But healing just by itself is not enough to base a full character around. Doctor, since that buff has gone up to B tier, she was in C tier before, for me at least. Or a very, very low B tier. And she can kite a little bit better, but it's still not changing the facts that she doesn't really have enough in her kit to be competitive against most hunters. Although, she is doing a little bit better, or worse, depending how you look at it, now that chip hunters are kind of the meta, because she can heal off the 2.5 damage, or she can, her healing is basically useless because of the 2.5 damage. The one nice thing about her is she hard counters Photographer, but you can heal off his 2.5 damage. His 2.5 damage is 1.5 damage if you do it right anyway, so it doesn't even really matter. Moving on to the next character, we're going to have the Gardener. She's pretty good. Her mid-game shields are actually, again, Chip Hunter meta, so they're almost useless. but against other hunters they can be good. Her dismantling chair thing is actually, I think, better than a lot of people give it credit for. It can really screw up hunters, especially if you do it in maps like Sacred Heart Hospital, and if you're coordinated with your team, like if they're running full gray power and you're like, okay, I'm going to disable this chair, the hunter could actually be in for a nasty surprise and you can struggle free. And especially if you're playing like a character like potentially like enchantress or entomologist, you can definitely get a lot of value off of that. But again, it's more situational. It's very situational, in fact. So Gardener is in the B tier. Next in the B tier, we have After Buff Thief. His reduction on how long it's going to take to stun the hunter is really not going to do much, in my opinion. Even like chip hunters again can hit him from a distance, and he's not really going to have a chance to like use his actual flashlight. He did have another thing that I read about that I couldn't really understand, about having like 5 flashlights and being able to set them down or something. Maybe this will help him with that. I don't really understand what it does. But again, this is all like speculation of, you know, how this is going to impact the meta. We can't really say a lot before that actually comes out. And to my knowledge, it's not out yet. I mean, not to my knowledge. I know it's not out yet. But yeah, that's that. He's going to be here after his buff, I think. Next in B tier, we actually have Before Buff Magician. That rescuing buff is just, it's so brutal, and there's not enough payoff with his wands. Just to warrant that. It's not enough from him to warrant that extremely difficult rescue, especially now with the Chip Hunter meta, when you have characters like Bon Bon and Sculptor guarding the chair. It's just absolute hell to rescue a magician, and so he is in B tier. And next in B tier, we have After Buff Magician. Again, 2 wands, just not enough. It's a lot better, don't get me wrong, it's going to be a lot better, and it's going to take away that brutal save, but it's still not enough to bump him up a tier, but it does make him like a good amount better than he was before. It's not enough to actually put him into any kind of tier, any kind of other tier. Alright, next we're going to have the Coordinator. Coordinator is actually interesting because I find she's a character where it's very hard to have a happy medium, where she's not too good or too bad. A lot of people saying she needs 2 bullets. I absolutely disagree with that fact. That would make her way too strong. The one problem with Coordinator is that her gun is incredibly powerful, but hunters a lot of the time might carry excitement, so it's basically her one good skill is pretty much void. She has a little bit to her apart from that, and the gun is it's a really good item. So it's enough said. She can't really be she can't really be in like A tier, for example. She's either going to be S tier or B tier, in my opinion, and right now she's B tier, just because she doesn't really have enough to do much after her flare gun. Next up, we have the Cowboy. Cowboy is alright. His kiting got improved, but it's still not phenomenal. It can be influential in some situations, but it also is kind of situational at times. He's a little bit less support now, but Cowboy's just a character. He has a really high ceiling, but he's also very situational. And, you know, again, he's situational, and that's basically all you have to say. He can be really good. If he was that good at 100% of the time, he would be A tier, but again, Cowboy, high ceiling, but very situational. Next in B tier, we have Before Buff Dancer. After Buff Dancer, it's going to be bananas, but Before Buff Dancer, she's fine. She's pretty good. She's a decent character. Her boxes can help you out a lot of the time, especially if you put them down in key areas of the map, and that can be very good for you, but not a lot to say about Dancer. Next, we have an overrated character, in my opinion, which is Embalmer. Embalmer, he's good, but his coffin is not as game-changing as people say it is. Yes, it can be incredibly game-changing. It can save the game a lot of the time, but... or not a lot of the time, sometimes. But again, a lot of the time it's not going to do that. It's going to be almost completely useless. It all really depends on how the embalmer kind of rotates and what people he knows and is able to put in the coffin. I don't really know a whole lot about embalmer, but it's still a little bit too situational to be an A tier in my opinion. He's still a lot better than he was though before, when his coffin would save the game like maybe 1 out of every 15 times or something. His coffin was just awful before, but it's pretty decent now, but still not enough to put him up into A tier in my opinion. Next in the B tier we had Wildling. Wildling has a time where he was like almost S tier, but he's just fallen. Like they buffed him and then immediately nerfed him to the point where he's not great anymore. He's still pretty good, he's still fine. You can still use him. He's not C tier anymore, but yeah, he's fallen a little bit too much from his buffed state to warrant him in A tier. Next up we have the First Officer, and again, I'm going to compare First Officer to Gravekeeper here, and Gravekeeper's an A tier because they're both rescuers with essentially the same ability in my eyes. But the thing about Gravekeeper is that he can soak a hit, a complete hit, whereas First Officer, if you predict his watch, you're kind of screwed. That's a really bad thing. Plus the fact that Gravekeeper can use his abilities to go under buildings and into like the basement or something, which is situational but still something. First Officer has that rescuing buff, which is nice, but you're really not going to be able to tell most of the time, like, or the Hunter is going to be able to tell is what I'm trying to say, like, the Hunter's going to know a lot of the time, so it's really not going to help you too much. Next in the B tier we have Barmaid. She hard counters Dream Witch still, and that's about it. She doesn't really do great against the Chip Hunter meta. She's pretty good against other hunters, but when you're playing again against like guards, sculptors, violinists, it's really hard to get that Dovlin off because they're constantly berating you with chip damages, and it's very annoying. So for those reasons, Barmaid is just under wraps for the current meta. Underrated, but she can't really shine against the powerful hunters right now, but against every other hunter she's quite good against. Anyway, next up we have the Postman. Guys, stop with this character. He's not good. He's not good. His post dog is easy to dodge if he throws it at you. His letters are situational at best. They hardly ever make a difference. Most of the time you're going to know the dungeon location. Exegates don't really need extra speed on the decoding anyway. 99% of the time those are open like lickety-split. His running letters practically useless. His vaulting letters are meh, again situational at best. And just his rescuing letter, his other one that uses primarily for rescuing, is just, you're probably already having a rescuer that's good at rescuing for that reason, so it's not really going to add much for them. Next up we have Prisoner, again another very overrated character. Stop. He's not as good as you think he is. In terms of like decoders, he's alright, but when you compare him to like Explorer Mechanic, that Explorer is a decoder that almost never gets found and can add tremendous value to ciphers when it matters most. And Mechanic has an extra body on the ground plus a decoding buff when no one's injured. So Prisoner, just his decoding, the way he decodes just doesn't help. Like if a hunter is camping a cipher, Explorer could come up and pop that cipher with a password page. If Prisoner connects to that cipher, the hunter is going to just break the connection. Like, his connection is just, it's not that good. The electrical field around it is getting stuns maybe like once every 20 games maybe, and it's not going to help you a lot of times unless you've actually set it up in a cipher that's in a really good loop, which basically never happens. And The only real good thing about him is that he can kite, and he has a little bit of a stun. But I mean, it's not good enough trade-off for the fact that he barely has any decoding bonus at all, and he has to have the connection activated for that to be activated anyway. So it's just, he's not as good of a character as you think he is, trust me. And lastly, in B tier, we have Painter. He's just once they nerfed his 3 paintings, Painter was over. 2 paintings is not enough, and that's basically all I have to say on that matter. And with that, let's move into the A tiers. I'm kind of trying to speedrun this because it's a lot to go through. Like, I don't want to make an hour video. I'm already on 20 minutes, and I've only gone through 2 tiers, so that's why I'm kind of trying to go really fast. So just forgive me for that. But first, in A tier, we have Explorer, who I've already mentioned. He's really good. He can put in, he's a decoder that barely ever gets found. He can potentially waste a lot of the hunter's time, and he can put password pages and ciphers at crucial times, and he can absolutely bamboozle a hunter and get ciphers in awkward spaces done quickly. The one drawback, though, is if he is found first, it's a kind of a catastrophic error. But if you're a very good explorer, if you've mastered this character like I have, don't mean to toot my own horn, but I think I've mastered explorer, then there are ways you can use your hiding mid-kite and get a lot of value off of that and waste a lot of the hunter's time. So if it was my personal opinion, I think explorer should be S tier, but generally with his skill set, I still think he should be A tier. Now, if we're going to move on, we got to talk about Forward. Forward is, I think, widely regarded as S tier, but I think he actually needs team communication for him to actually work. So he's really viable in a lot of rank matches, probably the most viable survivor in actually the A tier, but he's just, he needs a lot of team communication to work, and he's just absolutely horrendous if you mess up, and it's kind of curtains. And especially if the hunter manages to counter you. If they bring excitement or something and hit you, then it's kind of like an oh shit moment, because his decoding is slow, and now you have to send someone else for the rescue. It's a big fiasco. So for those reasons, Forward just can't be S tier in my opinion. Or in my opinion, just he can't in general, I think. Next in A tier, we have the Perfumer. She is on the verge of going out of this tier, to be honest, but she's still here. She can be very good early game. She's fallen off or gotten stronger, depending how you look at it, with chip hunters. She can still get a lot of value off of hunters if they go to normal attacker. And she can buy a lot of time for a mechanic. I know that's an old season strategy, but it still can be true. She can still buy a lot of time. And the thing about chip hunters is that they start the game with basically everything they need, their presents. So getting presents for them is kind of icing on the cake. It's not really necessary. So her presents feeding becomes kind of just a formality, not really anything. That's a big deal anymore. Like in the old days when you'd play a feaster against a perfumer, it would be like, oh dear, because she kind of has to presence feed against you and you snowball hard. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Next in A tier, we have Prospector. Again, controversial, but I think Prospector played right, and I mean like perfectly. And being very resourceful can absolutely change the tides of the game. Personally, I kind of feel like he should be in B tier, same with the next character, which is Enchantress, but I'm honestly going to lump both of these together because they're basically the same character, just the playstyles are a little bit different. But they can both absolutely change the tides of the game, which is why I put them in A tier. Their skill sets are really good and they don't diminish over time. They still have as much kiting and harassing potential at the start of the game as they do at the end of the game. So just, they can be very, very good, and you occasionally see them play in tournaments, but again, personally I think they should be in B tier. Next up in A tier, we have the Acrobat, a very underrated character in my opinion. The sky for Acrobat is incredibly high. he can be a insane, extreme, overpowered kiter at times, especially in maps that favor him like Moonlit River Park, and other times he can just fall flat on his face. He's a very high risk, high reward character. His bombs can help you just so much. Like, I can't even put into words sometimes how like helpful his bombs can be, and I can't even say, especially in Moonlit River Park, it can be so good. But he's high risk, high reward, and he's not consistently amazing, which is why he's not in S tier. Moving on, we have the Gravekeeper. I've already really explained him with the fact that he is better than First Officer and in a different tier than him. Next, we have before and after buff ento, or sorry, nerf ento, entomologist. Even after the nerf, guys, she's still gonna be good. She's really good now. She's borderline S tier now. I just couldn't bring myself to put her in there. But she's borderline S tier now, and this nerf is gonna just knock her back to a nice solid A tier. So yeah, she's still gonna be good. And next in, or last in A tier even, oh no, just next in A tier is the Batter. Again, basically the same as Acrobat, very high risk, high reward. The sky for the ceiling for Batter is just so high. He can be so good in certain situations, and he can harass better than a forward sometimes, but other times he just gets his ass clapped, and then it's kind of curtains for your whole team. So again, high risk, high reward. He's not consistently amazing, which is why he's not in S tier. And lastly now, we have Toy Merchant. Again, another high risk, high reward character in my opinion. You can risk opening chests and helping your team. And actually, I think this character can be very consistently good with a four-man team, and I think she could be very viable in actual tournament gameplays. Because you can say, okay, well, I've got this item, you can come here, I'll throw it at you, to maybe a character that needs an item, say, like a mercenary that, well, a mercenary is not really a realistic option, maybe like a mechanic that's out of doll, like maybe she had her doll found, used it to body block, and now you're the Toy Merchant, like, alright, well, I'm gonna throw you a magician's wand, or I'm gonna throw you a syringe, and you don't have to get close to them like you would have to pass an item off with Lucky Guy. Like, I've tried to use this Toy Merchant strategy with Lucky Guy, where, you know, I wish for an item, and then I use the item carrying thing and bring it over to somebody, but then you kind of have to get close to the hunter, and it can be a big mess. It takes even more time off decoding than just throwing it. Plus the fact that I play solo queue like 99% of the time, so it doesn't really work out. So again, Toy Merchant, really good with a four-man voice team, I think. But once you get into where you can only have 2 people teaming up, which, by the way, they're changing that, I'm not sure when, but they're changing that so you can team up with 4 people until tier 6 or at tier 6, I can't remember, which is a change I don't personally like, but I'll see how other people feel about it. I might make a whole nother video about that, again, getting sidetracked. Let's get into S tier. S tier is the best of the best. You're going to want to use these characters. These are still the characters that are really good in the game, still the characters that you want to be using to push in Season 17. And we're going to start this character list off with the Mercenary. Wow, so original. What a surprise. Mercenary in S tier, haven't heard that one before. Even after his nerfs, guys, he's still really good. He still has elbow pads. His process damage is still crazy good, especially against chip hunters in this meta, and still really suffer from that delayed damage, albeit not as much. He's still a really undesirable target to go against first, so if you find a mercenary first, it's kind of really a bother to the hunter. And yeah, I'm kind of trying to get through it quick because he's really just boring and bland to explain at this point. We all know why mercenaries S tier. Next in S tier, we have Seer. Wow, what a surprise! Seer in S tier? I never could have guessed. Wow. Like I say, again, an extra hit from Seer can be so influential in a game, like, especially if it's a character that knows what they're doing. If it's like a really good kiter, then Seer Owl can be crazy. It's fallen off a little bit with the Chip Hunter meta, but again, it still can be so good if timed right. It can be so influential. It can help us survive. It can make a difference between a 60-second kite and a 180-second kite with a seer owl. I mean, a little bit of an extreme example, but you get my point. Next in S tier is mechanic. Wow, again, really breaking it up with the S tiers this time, aren't we, 07? Really, new characters that are up here. Yeah, it's mechanic again, guys. That second body she adds to the map is just so good. Fifth body, technically, I guess. She can decode on the chair. She can use it for a body block. It's a very versatile thing. It's just a really nice thing to have. You're turning the game from a 4v1 to a 5v1, and when you have 3 people decoding while you're on the chair instead of 2, that can make the difference. You can prime that cipher very, very fast. So she can be an absolute, again, a glass cannon, but an absolute pain in the ass with the hunter. Very consistently. And lastly, we have the priestess. Again, wow, very original. Super meta breaking with this one. Controversial pick. Maybe a little bit, because priestess is generally put in the A tier, but I think she's an S tier. Her long portal can be insane when used properly. Her portals are very consistently overpowered on a lot of different maps. So basically, priestess is overpowered and needs to nerf again. I have a video about how we should nerf priestess up, and yeah, you should go watch that. Again, link will be in below. But I tried to speedrun that S tier because it's really just unimportant, unoriginal, and basically the same characters that we always see there. I'll try and make another tier list for the hunters, say what you should be playing in season 17 when that comes, how to kick your season off with a bang, because remember, you always play against better people when the season resets, because basically everybody from your tier is being put kind of into the same place. So you definitely want to be starting off on the right foot, or else you're going to not want to play rank for the whole season, and we don't want that. So definitely probably try and use characters from the S or A tiers. B tiers, again, pretty much only use if you've mastered them, and C tier, just don't use those characters, guys. I don't care. I don't care if you're on the leaderboards with them. They suck. Don't use them. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I don't actually know how long it's been. It's been, 32 minutes. How lovely. Tier list videos take a long time, because we have a lot of survivors in the game now, guys. And 2 more coming, which I'm very excited about. I'm very excited about these new survivors. I like their designs. But, yeah, there's links in the description that you should maybe look at. There's some cool stuff in there. There's some random persona generators that are kind of fun to mess around with. There's some, again, those 2 videos I mentioned, that if you're interested on how I think we should buff Lucky Guy, nerf Priestess, you could go look at that. There's probably end cards on the screen also with videos that are good for you from me that you might want to watch. And if you want to see how badly things have aged with the meta, then go check out some of my other tier lists. I'm sure they're very embarrassing and a much lower quality than this one. Anyways, have a nice day, and see you later.